skies. Leaving just another story. It's me, man-made life. They tell us how you fell from the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. And who do I have on the line here?
Yeah, I'll play. This is Charlie. Our phone just quit.
Well, this has been one of those mornings, Charlie. I had everything set up, everything working. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't look like I actually have everything working yet. Just a moment here. Let me double check that. And it crashed. Everything just crashed on me. So,
Well, my alarm went off. I get up, I make my coffee, get ready for the show. I look at the phone, it says your phone is scheduled to be turned back on November 2nd.
hey boy, yeah, and I got a player here. They say they got no sound here. Let me see. Your sound, okay. And why isn't this working? It's at any rate, everything that you can imagine has gone wrong here. I've rebooted. I've tried to get everything working. Computer tech scheduled to come in today, but and I don't think I'm broadcast. Yeah, okay. Shoutcast is coming up now. All right. We're hooked up to everything now. We're up on Shoutcast. We're up on everything except TalkShoe, which is I think worthless anyway, and I'm dumping. And Charlie Miller, how are you?
Well, good morning. Well, I'm awake. It's an exciting morning already.
Well, I mean, you know, I've been rebooting. Everything. My computer's obviously working. Everything's okay, but just a lot of strange interference. And yesterday, it wasn't no conspiracy. There was just a little freak storm back east, and it turned the power off to a blog talk radio, they said. But it's interesting that it just happened just as our show came up. It's like they don't want to hear you on my show.
That would be my assumption as well.
Now, let's talk about the People's Trust. What you're talking about with the People's Trust is really the whole republic that our founding fathers created and gave us under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Is that? Am I being accurate in that? Am I seeing this right?
Actually, if you read the federal Constitution, Article 7, the agreement to create the Constitution is between the states. The people have nothing to do with it.
Okay.
If you read the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, all of the acts of the Confederation, in particular the Northwest Ordinance on Statute 51, everything was done in the name and by the authority of the good people. The Articles of Confederation, the story goes that things did not work correctly, and the real issue is there's no common money system tied in the independent nations together, the 13 former colonies, and now the 13 states at that point. So the federal Constitution is an agreement for the states to set up a management company, basically. The management company was given certain powers of the states alone. The Articles of Confederation is a representative body of the people themselves. Major difference there. The only legal relationship I can find between myself and the government is the state constitution, the Articles of Confederation, and the acts under the Confederation until 1789. It's the only place I'm representing the people. And when I started reviewing these documents as a contract, they're open-ended contracts. There's no individual today alive that can be bound bound by the words and the agreements of the people that live in. And if you read those things as contracts very carefully, they're open-ended. You can sign on to them. And that's basically what we did as trustees. We signed on to those principles. We signed on to those mechanisms. We pledged our personal private property, which is our political will. Every person on this planet has an individual private property that could be denominated personal political will. The government structure itself is a political body. The political body was created to form certain branches of enforcement, in other words, legalized force. The only reasons I can find for any government is legalized force to protect all of the bodies of a member of the body politic. So we don't use the federal Constitution in the standard accepted sense. The way that the hierarchy, if you draw it out of a chart, it's very simple to understand. First of all, there's creator. Whatever you call it, doesn't matter. It's the same being. And second of all, there's me, and then there's us, the people. And then fourth, there's the agreement that we made to create a political body to protect ourselves. And fifth, there's the memorialization or the written form of that agreement, which is the state constitution or the Declaration of Independence when it first started. And then there's a sixth level down is the government that's created under our agreement. The seventh level down is the branches of the government. The eighth level down is their powers. So if you look at it in that context, the states, when they created the federal government, the first position would be the creators of the state. We would be the creator to the state. The state would be the secondary party, and the third party there would be the federal government. So the federal government is 6 levels down from every individual American. And if you look at it in that simple context, you begin to understand where the powers really are. And the general principle here that controls everything is that the created government or their agents or their powers can never be greater than the creator. And the simple fact is that if we do not, as individuals, hold the power to legislate or control our neighbors, then we could not assign that power to the government. Therefore, it does not have it. Period. There is no argument with that logic, is there?
To me, the current now there's been a lot of talk about the federal government this just being a corporation, a private corporation, and the Washington D.C. along with the city of London and the Vatican are pretty much the centers of power, and they said it seems that they've adopted a little different type of role model that's symbolized by the pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the top. Isn't that what they're trying to do?
That's what they've done, and in my view, it becomes very simple when you understand that a government and all of the entities to operate under it must get its power from its creator, the people. So in our current context, how that applies is that the government, when it formally incorporated itself as a private body, and an ownership position was established in it by other parties, other than the original constructors, the grantors of power, they changed the legal relationship around. They put themselves in first position to grant privileges. So if you look at it in the commercial context, currently raging around the world, you'll discover that these principles apply specifically to the banks. The banks have nothing. All they are is management systems for the only true asset on the planet, which is labor. There's only 2 assets, in our view, that are available on the planet. 2 core or real assets. Everything else is derivatives there too. The first asset is the raw materials that the creator presented to us with the planet, and no one can own those because we did not create them. We, as the users of those raw materials, can have an agreement, basically in the body of equity, to use these raw materials, and we'll respect that. That's where our current property has come from. does not make our ownership of that property valid in the context of the planet itself. The second issue is all raw materials must go through a man's hands before they can be changed into a valuable product. And if you accept that premise, which is pretty hard not to, you understand that the only true value in the money system is labor. So the conclusion would be that all money systems, all bank systems, are nothing more than management of labor. And if that is in fact the case, which it is, then the banks are the debtors to you because they hold your labor and they eat less of your labor to have any value for themselves.
You know, I find it incredible that our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson in particular, who wrote our Declaration of Independence, he tried to warn us. If you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around it will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. He said that we've got 1 million Americans out of their homes. And the bankers and the money that Bush gave the bankers would have paid the mortgages and gone right back to the bankers of every American. So they literally stole 1 million American homes from them. Got the homes, got the money. Well, what money? There is no money. It's all electronic entries. I mean, to me, that's what happened to the American people are a crime. Is it this paperwork that you filed with the Attorney General and the governor in California, and I believe you've done that in Washington too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What effect has that had? What and my question, you know, I mentioned yesterday, which of course I only got a partial recording of, that you know, Irwin Schiff and Lynn Meredith may have been absolutely right in the books that they wrote, Federal Mafia and things like that, and vultures in eagle's clothing. But it's a little like going to Al Capone and saying, Al, I found out extortion is illegal and I'm not paying you anymore. The intimidation starts, the threats start, and that's really what's everybody is being threatened and intimidated from the marchers on Wall Street who are getting put into the system, cataloged, fingerprinted, photographed, and put into the system.
Well, I agree that we're dealing with the legal force system, and the legalization of the force is based on a false premise. There's no one on this planet that at the point of a gun and through some sort of written paper that you don't know about, that you never consented to, or that you were never fully disposed on, can do anything to you unless it's slavery. When they put that gun to your head, and when they cannot show you your consent and their authority granted by the people that created the government to create that agency, and it doesn't exist. So what we're dealing with here is a slavery system, and it still comes back to a management of the resource. The resource in the government's case is political will. It does, in fact, have value. In the commercial system, it has to do with the value represented in Federal Reserve notes, private U.S. dollars. So you really can't separate the two. And we decided quite some time ago to develop what is called Individual Resolution Society, and you can find out about that on a website called Join IRS Now, or joinirs.org. And join individualresolutionsociety.org, I'm sorry. Join individualresolutionsociety.org. And what it does is deal with mortgages. And what it says is this, that the banks did not disclose to us the real facts. And here's 13 counts of fraud. And we're canceling the contract, the alleged contract with the bank for cause. And we attach that to the deed of trust that was granted to the bank and to the promissory note that the banks garner from you. And we cancel the contract, so there's no more legal relationship to the property or to you. And what it really comes down to, again, is the slavery. If the banks continue to go after an individual property or after that cancellation, they're participating in trespass upon your property. They're doing it through conspiracy for the purpose of the slavery to keep you in control within their system. Now, there's no one that can be forced to contract. If you're forced to contract, that's slavery. If you're forced to pay taxes, that's slavery. If the government uses this administrative procedure called courts or levy system, that's slavery. Without your consent, it's very simple, it's slavery. And there's a series of court cases culminating in 1988, United States versus Kosminski, AOZ-MINSKI, 487 U.S. 931. And if you read the case very carefully, it says this is a rule that applies to all government agents and agencies, that slavery does rear its ugly head in any kind of forum where there's no disclosure, that the law or the legal process is considered slavery when they're in full knowledge and consent by the individual as a target. Now, our view of the federal Supreme Court is much different than anyone else's. My question to the federal Supreme Court and to the federal judiciary and the state judiciary in general is simply this. How does the created agency, these courts, whether they're state or federal, grant themselves power to control individuals that are the grantors of the power? We created the office. We created the entity that created the procedures for these courts. So as the creators, how can we be held to our creation's own administrative process? There must be some sort of relationship there, some sort of contract between us and those individual agents. And over the last 100 years, there's been a very, very complete and confident and quite intensive mechanism to get us to believe that the government has power over us instead of the other way around. So I don't believe that. And as far as the force issue goes, I spent 12 and a half years in prison. I didn't back up then, I'm not backing up now. My freedom, my liberty is worth my life. If I don't have that, I'm in breach of my obligations to my Creator, and I'm not going to do that for anybody. I am the created. Therefore, when I recognize there's a Creator, I have obligations. And those obligations include me being responsible to what I created, which is the government. I signed on to the documents, the Declaration of Independence, the state constitution. I said I pledge my political will. Therefore, I became the creator. That's what a trustee is at the moment. What we discovered, and I discovered in particular beginning in 2000 while I was in prison, is that the federal trust that was created to protect the states and therefore to protect the people was abandoned. Mr. Lincoln, when he issued Executive Order 100, breached his contract. He was the last elected president by the real republic. When he issued the order to have state legislators arrested in 1861, because he believed, without any evidence, without any due process, that the state legislators were going to rebel and had them arrested, he abandoned his position. And at that point, an executive trust went into place, and it's operated through military rule, which is administered through Admiralty law, and also witness of the flag and the ensign in the courts. So if that trust was abandoned under trust law, the res corpus, the very value of the trust itself, which is our political will, must be protected.
Charles, I've been writing about this. I've been writing about this for years. I've been telling people you're a slave. You know, you're bred to be a slave in a system. You're sent to school to train you to work in factories, and they've just refined the art of slavery to the point that the slaves don't know they're slaves. Our founding fathers recognized this, and that's why they gave us the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, to remove us from the banking system. The banks were doing the same things to the Americans that they're doing to us now. So nothing's really changed over the last 200 years, except for the technology. They've suddenly got the ability to give us the mark of the beast that the Bible predicted, and I don't know if the Bible is prophecy or a plan, that they're following, waiting for technology to catch up to them. What do we do?
Well, here's the bottom line for me. There's only two choices in this situation: stand up or bend over. The bottom line is we have all of the power, all of the authority, all of the right to rely on the documents the way they're written, don't we? That means the Declaration of Independence. Thereafter means the 13 state constitutions that agreed to confederate and build a nation. Article 2 of the federal document called the Articles of Confederation says this is a perpetuity, it's good forever. It's an agreement between the states. And what the title of this nation that we welded together then is the capital T, the United States of America. And if you look in the old documents, you find up until the 1860s, all of the treaties were entered into in that capital T proper name. If you look at one statute, 1 USC 112, 113, and 204, it will tell you that Little and Brown's published of the United States Statutes of Large is the law. And the last year that they were published was 1858. And the reason for that is the 1860 legislature removed itself. It never requalified. So they could only authorize the publishing of the 1859 and 1860 legislative sections in 1861. Lincoln abandoned the trust. Lincoln's process was to return the country to the original form. And the money reason is why he was assassinated. Andrew Johnson attempted to return it under Lincoln's order to the original republic and restore the public trust. Mr. Johnson, as president, was not allowed to do that, and the corruption took over. Under the next president, Grant, you can see if you read the history, the corruption really got him started right then, and the whole thing changed. So here's the issue. Now, which do you guys want to rely on? The written word that the whole world is accepting, that Americans are free, that we have a form of government that operates this way, or all of this private junk behind the closed curtains that no one can see. I don't care which one they say. It can either be the original documents or behind the closed curtains. If they say the original documents, and the Royal Bay is the bank system that owns the private Federal Reserve, owns the private U.S. Treasury, owns the private United States Federal Corporation, and owns the private state corporations. The Royal Bay, if they want to agree to operate under the original documents, that puts us in first position. And if they want to say that we're going to operate by all these secret agreements and all these things that are behind the curtain, they're just admitting slavery. So either place they go, we're in the same position, aren't we? And all it takes is a few Americans standing up and saying no more of this stuff, and it will change. If we look at the 60s, that's the most recent example of a huge political body taking form and being in the streets and saying no more. So the issue is this: you either do the right thing now and you occupy your own solution, or you stay a slave. Well, my choice is to seek the solutions. I learned from having children, they're great teachers, that you cannot go back and change yesterday in any manner whatsoever. And if you bring yesterday's problems into today, you're damn sure going to screw up tomorrow. Bottom line is you can have the Super Bowl full of 120,000 people, all discussing problems, and the only result is problems. Or you can have a few of us out in the parking lot having fun discussing solutions, and we will create solutions. And I choose to create solutions rather than to deal with the problems.
Now,
if we look at the context of what we're going into now, the problems are so massive that there's really nowhere to get a hold of them. However, there is a very simple mechanism to begin building the solutions, and that's clean up the bank system. Because without payment, the corruption that we're dealing with that cause all these problems can't survive. They function on money. Their very lifeblood is money.
You know, there's examples out there. There is one state that's not in debt, that's not in trouble, and that would be North Dakota, because it has its own state bank. Is that an answer?
Let me see if I can explain this in very simple terms so I can get it. that state bank still uses private money, doesn't it? Federal Reserve issuances.
Yes.
So if you accept the premise that the Federal Reserve private money system is a rotten apple, and you want to make a pie with rotten apples, you end up with rotten apples, don't you? So how do you have a clean bank system that is using as its very source and substance a corrupted money? Whether it's showing a profit and whether there is a reserve there is not the issue. The core of the issue is the source of the funds, the source of the authority of the bank to play with money. Is it clean? We always have to go back to the source where something begins. If we attempt to take on a problem in the middle of the problem, there's no way that we can solve it because you've got problems in the future, problems in the past. And if we're on the end of life now where we attempt to solve all the problems first, we never get to the source of the problem. So the public trust has decided that the only issue to focus on is the money system. That's what we do. And here's the very simple fact of it. The whole world understands that the bank system is collapsing because it's based on debt. All right? The simple fact, to explain this to yourself, is who is liable on a debt instrument? If all of the money is based on debt, the question to ask yourself is who is liable for the debt? The issuer of the debt instrument. Now, Clay, can I bind you to a debt to Mr. Obama in the White House without your consent, without your knowledge, and without any contract? No, I cannot.
No.
If I attempt to enforce that, it's slavery, isn't it? So if you cannot be bound to a debt to someone else, a third party, who else in this country could? No one else can. So right there, it kills the whole idea of a national debt that's due on the American people. The only party that's responsible and fully liable for the issues of all these debt instruments is the owner of the system that issues the debt instruments.
Well, the Rothschilds certainly have enough money to pay off all the debts of the whole world that they've created, couldn't they?
No, actually they don't.
No?
Because we have all of these derivatives of this debt that have compounded all of this interest over years. You know, the interest that they've created and the value in the system that's been created because of the continued issue of these debt instruments without any substance below them means that those instruments have no value.
All right, let me ask you this. These Occupy Wall Street movements are going on all over the world right now, in Egypt and all that, and it doesn't seem like anything's getting any better. It doesn't seem like anything. They may change regimes, they may kill Gaddafi, but they haven't changed anything. Everything's still operating as usual. And you and I, because we're even just talking about this, are going to be labeled anti-governmental, racist, rebels, anti-Semite, extremist, you know, whatever particular name. You know, if we'd been doing this 20 years ago, they would have been calling us communist, because that was the particular villain of choice. And it's very difficult to change the world. How do we change it? But it seems to what you're talking about is provable in court. You know, we're not required to be slaves. You know, we've signed ourselves into this. We can stand up if we could do it on a town by town, county by county, or block by block system here, and show people that they've got a choice, that it will work. I tried to do that with Liberty Villages. My plan with Liberty Villages was, if you can grow your own food and generate your own energy, we don't need the government.